What would make you happy for us to think about you?
I love when people write me and they say, I played you at my wedding. That song helped me get through cancer. That's what makes me feel good, that I've earned my right to be born.
Barbra Streisand is not just a singer or an actress. She is one of the rare figures who can leave the world in awe with a single note, and moments later, haunt it with roles steeped in sorrow. From the dazzling lights of Funny Girl on Broadway to her Oscar win for A Star is Born, Streisand shattered every convention of looks, voice, and artistic power to become an irreplaceable icon of American culture. Her voice once shook the grandest halls, while her resolve carved a path for countless women to step out from under the shadow of men in Hollywood. Streisand is not only an artist, she is the voice of courage, a testament to the will to live true to oneself, even when it meant facing waves of criticism and misunderstanding. For more than 6 decades, she stood firm between the glare of fame and the depths of darkness, turning childhood wounds and cruel ridicule into fuel for creativity. Yet, in her 80s, behind that radiant legacy still lie scars that never healed. Stage fright, turbulent romances, and secrets of marriage that have kept Hollywood endlessly curious. Let us revisit that dazzling yet stormy journey to see why Barbra Streisand is both a legend and a fragile human being beyond belief. Barbra Streisand was born on April 24th, 1942, in Brooklyn, New York, into a family of Jewish immigrants. Her father, Emanuel Streisand, was of Austrian-Polish descent. Her mother, Diana Ida Rosen, came from Russian roots. They carried with them hopes of a better life in America. But that dream quickly fractured. Diana once had a natural soprano voice and a deep passion for music. Yet she was forced to set it all aside to work as a secretary, living with a lingering sense of regret. The true tragedy struck in August 1943 when Barbra was just 1 year old. Her father died suddenly, leaving behind a vast emptiness, both emotional and financial. At only 34, Diana became a widow, struggling to raise 2 children in poverty. In their cramped Brooklyn apartment, Barbra grew up amid constant arguments over money and the gnawing fear of what tomorrow would bring. School offered little refuge. At Erasmus Hall High School, Streisand was often labeled the odd one for her skinny frame, messy hair, and eccentric clothes. Even her drama teacher once dismissed her, saying she lacked stage potential because of her appearance. Ironically, in the same school choir at the time was Neil Diamond, who would later become a musical legend. Unlike Diamond, however, Barbra was remembered only as an awkward misfit, with few friends, retreating early into her own inner world. Life at home was no better. Diana, who never believed her daughter could succeed, urged Barbra to learn secretarial skills for a stable future. Barbra resisted by quietly nurturing her artistic dream, a determination born out of her mother's cold skepticism. Without a rehearsal space, she chose the apartment stairwell. There, the natural echo amplified her voice, and neighbors came to know her as the girl who sang in the stairwell. No one could have imagined that this humble corner would be the first studio of a future legend. When her mother remarried, any hope of finding comfort in a new father figure quickly faded. Her stepfather was not only distant, but cruel. He would point out her flaws, her large nose, her uneven teeth, and sneer, "You'll never be anybody." For a young girl, those words cut deep. But rather than conform, Streisand resolved never to change herself just to please others. When pressured to fix her teeth or undergo nose surgery to boost her chances in show business, she firmly refused. "If I change, I won't be myself anymore." From a childhood of scarcity and judgment, Barbra Streisand forged resilience, turning flaws into a trademark, turning doubt into drive. Those years of being called the odd one in Brooklyn, of singing in a dim stairwell, of enduring cruel remarks, these became the unshakable foundation of a star unlike any other in Hollywood. Despite growing up in poverty and surrounded by constant criticism, Barbra Streisand found an escape: music. It was the rare world where she felt safe and truly heard. By the age of 13, Streisand was already singing at seemingly modest venues: parent-teacher meetings, weddings, summer camps. Yet every time she sang, she not only eased her own loneliness but left others silent with emotion. On December 29, 1955, her mother, though never fully convinced of her daughter's artistic dream, spent $25, a significant sum at the time, to buy an hour of recording at NOLA Recording Studios in New York. There, Barbra recorded 2 songs: "Zing Went the Strings of My Heart" and "You'll Never Know." The record was brought home, and later, "You'll Never Know" appeared in the retrospective box set just for the record in 1991, while "Zing" was never officially released. Still, it marked the first proof that her voice could live beyond the walls of a poor Brooklyn apartment. That same summer, while on vacation with her mother in the Catskills, Streisand recorded 4 more songs with the help of a pianist. Though these recordings were never released, they carried special meaning. It was one of the rare moments when her mother, Diana, was left speechless upon realizing her daughter's voice was truly remarkable. In the following years, Barbra began performing at small clubs, guided by a friend who would become pivotal: Barry Dennen. Dennen encouraged her, recorded her at his Greenwich Village apartment, and even taped her nightclub performances at the Lion and Bonsoir. He also staged and directed her very first nightclub act. From these venues, Streisand experienced, for the first time, enthusiastic applause. A sharp contrast to the doubt she faced at home. Her breakthrough came when she entered a talent competition in Greenwich Village. Still just a teenage girl with no name recognition, she mesmerized the room the moment she began to sing. The audience rose to their feet, and that victory opened the door for Streisand to become a nightclub singer. From then on, she decided to shorten Barbra to Barbra, a strange but unmistakable name. In 1960, she performed for the first time at a gay bar in Manhattan, where she received overwhelming support. In 1961, she signed a contract to perform at the Town and Country Restaurant in Winnipeg, Canada. Critics raved, though even the owner admitted he couldn't understand why a young girl with a voice so far from convention could be so captivating. The major turning point came in 1962, when Streisand landed a small role in "I Can Get It For You Wholesale" on Broadway. With her unique voice and performance style, she quickly became the most talked-about name of the season. Soon after, Columbia Records signed her, and her debut, the Barbra Streisand album, released in 1963, launched her officially into the ranks of America's most promising vocalists. From the girl mocked for her looks and singing in a stairwell, Streisand had taken her first solid steps toward stardom, and it was only the beginning. From nightclub stages in Greenwich Village, Barbra Streisand stepped onto Broadway with "I Can Get It For You Wholesale," 1962. Though it was only a small role, it drew enough attention to land her bigger opportunities. Just 2 years later, Streisand exploded into fame with Funny Girl, 1964. Not long before that, the Barbra Streisand album had already earned her the Grammy for Album of the Year, an exceptionally rare win for a female artist at the time. Few knew that Streisand had hesitated, worrying she was too inexperienced to record an album. But Columbia went ahead anyway. That hesitation, ironically, marked the beginning of a new era. Music made her a star, but film cemented her status. In 1968, Streisand sang and starred in the film adaptation of Funny Girl, winning the Academy Award for Best Actress. Even more memorable, it was one of the rare occasions in Oscar history where there was a tie. She shared the award with Katharine Hepburn. In the famous Don't Rain on My Parade sequence, Streisand insisted on filming aboard a real moving train instead of a studio set. The gamble worried the crew, but the result became iconic, forever linking her image with that of Fanny Brice. Her subsequent films, Hello, Dolly, The Way We Were, 1973, and A Star is Born, 1976, solidified her as one of the biggest box office stars of the 1970s. The Way We Were spent 3 weeks at #1, won on the Billboard Hot 100, and was the best-selling single of 1974. Initially, Streisand had no plans to sing it, but composer Marvin Hamlish's persistence convinced her, and the song became one of her career-defining works. With A Star is Born, Streisand made history. She simultaneously topped the Billboard charts with both a #1 album and a #1 single. One album and a #1 single, Evergreen. The song earned her both the Academy Award for Best Original Song and the Grammy for Song of the Year. Though collaborators often complained she was too controlling on projects, it was precisely this decisiveness that made Streisand one of the first women in Hollywood to command full creative power. In the 1980s, Streisand reinvented herself again. Guilty, 1980, her collaboration with Barry Gibb sold more than 15 million copies worldwide and became the best-selling album of her career. At first, she feared her voice wouldn't fit disco, but Gibb reassured her. It's the difference that makes it a hit. He was right. Woman in Love from the album dominated international charts. Beyond music, Streisand founded Barwood Films and became one of the few women in Hollywood with influence as both producer and director. Her film, Yentl, 1983, which she co-wrote, directed, produced, and starred in, grossed nearly $69 million worldwide, won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, and made Streisand the first woman ever to win a Golden Globe for Best Director. On the music stage, Streisand holds the record for the most #1 hits. 1 albums on the Billboard 200 by a female artist, with 11 chart-topping albums spanning from the 1960s through the 2000s and 10s, a feat still unmatched. Her global record sales exceed 150 million, including over 68 million in the United States alone. Though she rarely tours, each return to the stage has broken box office records, proving her enduring draw across generations. Looking back, Streisand's career is a clear progression of milestones, from tiny nightclubs to Broadway, to her first Oscar, to her reign as a recording icon, and ultimately, to her groundbreaking position as a female producer-director in Hollywood. At every stage, she set a new standard and proved that limits exist only to be broken. Behind the stage lights and prestigious awards, Barbra Streisand's personal life was just as headline-grabbing as her career. If her professional journey soared steadily to the top, her love life was far more turbulent. marked by stormy relationships with famous men. One of her most talked-about romances was with Pierre Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada. The pairing of a Hollywood star and a world leader instantly became a media sensation, dubbed Trudeau-mania. The press at the time speculated endlessly about Streisand's possible influence on Trudeau's political decisions. In her memoir, Streisand confessed she had quietly chosen Trudeau after reading an article about him months before they met. Their first encounter was at the premiere of Funny Girl, 1968, where she was swept away by his intelligence, charisma, and what she described as a smile that could be carved into marble. She recalled, "Trudeau was like a combination of Albert Einstein and Napoleon, only taller. With him, I could hide in the shadows a little." Their relationship unfolded across flights back and forth. Trudeau visited New York while she was filming The Owl and the Pussycat, 1969, and Streisand flew to Canada, at one point even attending a parliamentary session. She wrote, "The whole chamber laughed when an opposition member asked if he could take his eyes off the visitors long enough to answer a question. Pierre blushed. I blushed, too, and laughed along." Yet the age gap, Trudeau was 50, Streisand only 27, fresh from a divorce and wrestling with insecurities, made her feel a little frightened by the intensity of the romance. "My mind was in love, but my body was not," she admitted. Streisand eventually returned to Los Angeles, creating distance to step away from a relationship that felt overwhelming. Though love didn't last, their bond endured for more than 3 decades. Trudeau escorted her to a gala in 1983. And even in the late 1990s, he was still writing her letters. When he passed away in 2000, Streisand mourned deeply, writing that she had lost a wonderful friend. Years later, when she met his son, Justin Trudeau, by then also Canada's Prime Minister, she was moved by the resemblance. Pierre would have been so proud. After Trudeau, Streisand entered a high-profile romance with Don Johnson, the television star of Miami Vice. They first met on a Christmas trip to Aspen, where Johnson charmed her with his radiant smile and sun-kissed looks. He was the heartthrob of the moment. "I have to admit, I was drawn to attractive men. It was almost like a work of art. I collected them," Streisand wrote in her memoir. The relationship began playfully, with boxing matches featuring Mike Tyson, helicopter rides, and yacht adventures. None of these were her usual interests, but she happily indulged. The entertainment press hailed them as Hollywood's new golden couple, constantly radiant in the spotlight. But after a few months, cracks appeared. Johnson missed Barbra's birthday party because of filming in Calgary, and her visit to the set turned painful as he seemed distant and cold. The breaking point came with their duet, "Till I Loved You." While the song was beloved by fans, Johnson felt overshadowed, fearing Streisand's enormous presence would eclipse his own career. Instead of voicing his fears openly, he responded with anger and suspicion, while Streisand quietly withdrew. What finally ended it for her was a phone call, answered not by Johnson, but by his ex-wife, Melanie Griffith. Johnson was helping Griffith through rehab at the time, but Streisand was disheartened by his lack of honesty. "I couldn't be with a man who wasn't emotionally truthful with me," she wrote. In the end, they parted amicably, without regret. Yet the relationship left a strange aftertaste. 30 years later, I still occasionally see Don at parties. He always hugs me and whispers, "I love you." I don't answer back. Another romance that drew major attention was with young tennis star Andre Agassi. Barbra was 28 years older than him, a gap that fueled endless headlines in the 1990s, with the press speculating about Agassi's true intentions. Amusingly, when hotel tycoon Steve Wynn first mentioned Agassi to her, Barbra casually asked, "Who?" as she had never heard of him, being indifferent to sports. At the time, Agassi had yet to win a Grand Slam, but he was smitten with the legendary actress, while Streisand merely wished him luck. Good luck at Wimbledon. Yet his persistence led to a meeting, and soon, a short-lived but dazzling romance. In her memoir, Streisand described the relationship as both fun and completely unexpected. To avoid paparazzi, they even devised outrageous schemes, such as in London, when Agassi's driver smuggled him out of dinner hidden in the trunk of a car. Publicly, they appeared together at major events, but behind the scenes, they worked hard to protect their private bond. The press obsessed over their age difference, but Agassi responded bluntly, "So what if she's 28 years older than me?" He likened dating Streisand to wearing molten lava and insisted that their differences were exactly what made the romance so exciting. Ultimately, the relationship didn't last. Still, Agassi later spoke of Streisand with respect and gratitude, calling it a unique chapter in his personal life, a brief but passionate memory unlike any other romance he had experienced. Beneath the glamorous image of a world-adored star, Streisand carried a deep longing for peace and stability. From an early age, she sought the traditional security of family life, though the path proved anything but easy. In the early 1960s, while still a struggling performer, Streisand lived in a tiny apartment at 1157 3rd Avenue in Manhattan, above a restaurant called Oscar's Salt of the Sea. The cramped space, with rent of only $62 a month, was where she shared her youth with actor Elliot Gould, her fellow performer, and her first great love. From those modest and difficult beginnings, they wrote an important chapter of their lives together. In 1963, at just 21 years old, Barbra married Gould. They quickly became one of the most beloved couples of the 1960s, seen as the perfect union of two rising talents. 3 years later, they welcomed their son, Jason Gould, born in 1966, the strongest bond of their marriage. But behind the seemingly happy facade, cracks soon emerged. In a later interview, Gould admitted the reason for their breakup was that we didn't grow together. As Streisand's career skyrocketed in music and film, she became a global star, while their marriage could no longer sustain its early balance. Gould recalled, "We did great. We had a wonderful life. But then Barbra became more important than the two of us." That statement carried more than nostalgia. It hinted at bitterness. He acknowledged the love they once shared, but also exposed a harsh truth. In Hollywood, fame often outweighs personal commitments. When one partner becomes a star, the spotlight doesn't just consume time and privacy. It can easily turn marriage into the backdrop of a career. For Gould, Barbra becoming more important than the two of us was an admission that even love could not compete with the weight of stardom. Their 8-year marriage ended in 1971, leaving behind not just a separation, but what Gould described as a brilliant time, something no one else could ever have as we did. Streisand would later find lasting happiness with James Brolin, while Gould moved on to other marriages. Yet Jason Gould, their only child, remains the clearest testament to a romance once watched closely by all of Hollywood. After the collapse of her marriage to Elliot Gould and several unfulfilled romances, Barbra Streisand finally found lasting stability with James Brolin. Their fateful meeting took place in 1996 at a dinner party. Neither expected to find new love that night. But when their eyes met, everything seemed to change. Barbra and James were quickly drawn to one another, and before long they became one of Hollywood's most admired couples. Their first encounter was both unusual and unforgettable. Upon meeting James for the first time, instead of a polite greeting, Barbra reached out, touched his hair, and bluntly asked, "Who messed up your hair?" It was classic Streisand, frank and witty, and rather than being offended, James found it refreshing and charming. That candid spark created an instant bond between them. They married in 1998, exactly 2 years after their first meeting. The wedding, held at Barbra's Malibu estate, was carefully guarded for privacy. True to her nature, Barbra went to extraordinary lengths to keep the ceremony intimate. She even blasted jungle sounds and rock and roll music outside the wedding tent to prevent eavesdropping on their vows. It was a testament to her determination to protect the sacredness of her most personal moments. Though their marriage has lasted more than 2 decades and is widely admired, it is also marked by quirky, unique habits that make their relationship stand out. Perhaps the most talked about is their decision to maintain separate bank accounts. Having endured 2 previous marriages, Brolin understood the financial strains that can complicate a union. He believed keeping finances separate would minimize conflict and preserve personal freedom. This wasn't just practical, it also symbolized the couple's respect for each other's independence within the marriage. Even more unusual, however, is Streisand's famous basement shopping mall. Instead of using her Malibu basement for storage, she transformed it into a whimsical private shopping street, where she displayed her eclectic collections. The mall featured everything from vintage clothing boutiques to a frozen yogurt stand, and even an antique doll shop. For Barbra, it was more than storage. It was a creative sanctuary, a space to relax and indulge in small joys. The basement mall became a subject of fascination in Hollywood. When friends like Lady Gaga or Ryan Murphy visited, they were captivated by its eccentric charm. Murphy, the creator of Glee, once admitted that an evening spent with Gaga exploring Barbra's basement shops was one of the most delightful and unforgettable experiences of his life. Despite their quirks, Barbra and James both understood that sustaining a marriage required constant renewal of love and connection. They made time for each other, whether through romantic evenings or spontaneous getaways. James once shared that Barbra often cooked for him, though she wasn't a skilled chef. What mattered was the effort and affection she poured into those meals, which made him feel cherished and valued. They also supported each other's careers. Brolin has admitted that Barbra helped him become not only a better actor, but also a better man. In return, Streisand has said that James brought her balance, something she had long struggled to find amid the pressures of her artistic career. Though they never had children together, they built a blended family of harmony and warmth. James had 3 children from his previous marriages, and Barbra worked hard to create an environment of love and mutual support. That sense of family unity has been a cornerstone of their enduring marriage. So, is keeping separate finances, as Barbra Streisand and James Brolin do, the golden secret to a lasting marriage, or merely a way to avoid unnecessary clashes? If it were you, would you keep your finances separate or combine them? Alongside a turbulent personal life, Barbra Streisand's career was far from smooth. The fame she achieved from Funny Girl brought more than applause. It thrust her into an atmosphere of suffocating tension. On Broadway, she found herself working opposite Sidney Chaplin, son of film legend Charlie Chaplin. While the spotlight illuminated Barbra's brilliance, for Sidney it only deepened his sense of being overshadowed. During performances, Chaplin often displayed open irritation, at times even mocking or criticizing Streisand in front of the crew. Instead of collaborating to elevate the play, he treated her success as a personal threat. For a young actress just stepping into the limelight, such hostility wasn't just painful, it left her anxious before every performance. Broadway nights became not only an artistic test, but also a psychological battle. Streisand began suffering from insomnia, fearful that personal conflict might ruin both the production and the fragile reputation she was building. According to accounts from cast members, the tension between the two became an open secret backstage at Funny Girl. It was an early lesson for Streisand. Success on Broadway meant enduring brutal clashes, where talent was tested not only by art, but by survival in a fiercely competitive environment. After Funny Girl, another incident deepened her fears. In 1967, during a concert in Central Park, before more than 100,000 spectators, Streisand suddenly forgot the lyrics mid-performance. The shock of that moment grew into a crippling phobia that lasted nearly 3 decades. She virtually withdrew from live performances, refusing tours and major concerts, even as her recording and film career soared. For 27 years, she confined herself to the studio and the screen, avoiding the stage lights that once defined her. It wasn't until 1994 that she dared to return with Barbra Streisand. The concert at Madison Square Garden. Tickets sold out within hours. The show was broadcast live on HBO, and it went on to win 5 Emmy Awards. It was more than a comeback. It was a triumphant rebirth, transforming a fear that had haunted her for decades into one of the most legendary performances in history. Barbra Streisand, though celebrated for her extraordinary talent and illustrious career, has not been immune to scandals that shook public opinion. One of the most infamous was the 2003 lawsuit that later gave rise to what is now known as the Streisand effect. When she discovered that photographs of her Malibu estate had appeared on an environmental website documenting coastal erosion in California, Streisand reacted fiercely. She sued the photographer and the website for $50 million in an attempt to suppress the images. Ironically, the lawsuit backfired. Instead of silencing exposure, it amplified it, making her home one of the most talked about subjects on the internet. The incident became a textbook example of how efforts to conceal information often only draw greater public attention. Her controversies didn't stop there. Streisand has long been outspoken about politics. A loyal supporter of the Democratic Party, she never hesitated to champion its candidates and causes. Yet her bold stances were not always well received, frequently sparking backlash from those on the opposite side of the political spectrum. Her words often ignited heated debates, dividing public opinion sharply. Perhaps the most controversial moment came in 2019, when she commented on the sexual abuse scandal involving Michael Jackson. Streisand acknowledged that the victims had clearly been hurt, but added that Jackson had his own sexual needs, and that the victims had come through it okay. The remark triggered immediate outrage, with critics accusing her of being insensitive and lacking empathy. Streisand was forced to issue a public apology and clarify her views. But the damage lingered, leaving a stain on her public image. These scandals, while not erasing her artistic brilliance, added layers of contradiction to her persona, making Streisand a figure at once divisive and magnetic in the eyes of the public. Streisand is known not only for her voice and performances, but also for her political candor. She is among the few Hollywood stars who openly criticized Republican presidents. In 2001, when George W. Bush first took office, Streisand wrote a letter urging Democrats not to let this administration destroy the country, a direct warning that quickly earned her the label of being biased and overly politicizing art. With Donald Trump, she was even more outspoken. In January 2017, just before his inauguration, she published a lengthy letter on HuffPost, calling him a threat to American democracy for his derogatory remarks about women, immigrants, and the press. In 2018, she released the album Walls, featuring Don't Lie to Me, a direct attack on the Trump administration, condemning dishonesty and urging vigilance. By 2019, she doubled down, describing Trump as a dishonest man who destroys democratic values, undeterred by conservative backlash. These declarations made Streisand one of Hollywood's most forceful political voices. At the same time, they often placed her at the center of controversy, a reminder that her career and public image have always walked the thin line between art and politics. Despite being one of the most famous stars in the world, Barbra Streisand has preserved a deeply personal and intimate private life. In that world, her greatest love extends not only to art or the stage, but to her dogs, whom she considers true family members. The clearest example of this bond was her relationship with Samantha, a coton de Tulear, who was by her side for 14 years. When Samantha died in 2017, Streisand was devastated. Unable to bear the loss, she chose to clone Samantha, creating two new dogs, Miss Violet and Miss Scarlet. "You can't clone a soul," Streisand admitted, "but when I look into their faces, I see Samantha." For her, they were not lifeless replicas, but new companions continuing an unbroken chain of love. Though she and James Brolin never had children together, their family was completed in another way, through their dogs. They brought joy, comfort, and acted as glue that strengthened their marriage through the years. Alongside her love for animals, Streisand is fiercely protective of her privacy. Away from the spotlight, she and James lived deliberately apart from paparazzi lenses. Often, upon noticing they were being followed, they would change routes and drive to remote places to enjoy peace. For them, it wasn't just about avoiding noise. It was a way of shielding their happiness from intrusion. Her Malibu estate embodies this desire. It is more than a residence. It is her fortress, designed to block out outside curiosity. Within its walls, Streisand carves out simple pleasures, even transforming her basement into a private shopping mall. Strange, perhaps, but quintessentially Barbra, crafting her own world where she can simply be herself, free from interference. From the silences of her private life to the dazzling lights of stage and screen, Barbra Streisand's journey is not merely the story of a star, it is the making of a cultural legacy that spans generations. She is among the rare artists to achieve EGOT, the quartet of Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony awards. In history, only a little over 20 people have done so, and Streisand was among the earliest to prove that artistic talent could transcend the boundaries of genre. With more than 150 million records sold worldwide, She remains one of the best-selling female artists of all time, and she still holds the record for the most #1 hits. One album on the Billboard 200 by a female artist. Streisand's influence goes far beyond music. In film, she shattered barriers for women by becoming the first female director ever to win a Golden Globe, with Yentl, 1983. Choosing to write, direct, produce, and star in the project herself was considered a reckless gamble in a Hollywood still dominated by men. Its success paved the way for generations of female directors, establishing Streisand as a symbol of artistic pioneering. In the realm of popular culture, her name is tied to an immortal concept, the Streisand effect, the phenomenon where attempts to suppress information only spread it more widely. From a personal lawsuit, she inadvertently coined a media term now widely used in journalism, technology, and sociology. Her influence also extends into politics and society. As a powerful voice for the Democratic Party, Streisand has been polarizing, yet admired for her fearlessness in expressing her views. She became an example of an artist who not only sings and acts, but also uses her fame to take part in broader social conversations. Streisand's legacy, then, is not defined merely by golden statuettes, record-breaking sales, or sold-out concerts. It lies in her ability to redefine what it means to be a star. A Jewish woman once mocked for her looks, who lived with stage fright so severe she stayed away from concerts for nearly 3 decades, yet still rose to become an icon. Above all, she proved that art is not only for entertainment, it can shape culture, challenge prejudice, and inspire across time. In her 80s, Barbra Streisand has not stepped away from the spotlight. She has simply chosen to appear differently, rarely, but each time as a statement. At her Malibu home with James Brolin, she finds peace in the small things: the garden, the ocean waves, and her 2 dogs, Miss Violet and Miss Scarlet, the clones of Samantha, her 14-year companion and one of the deepest emotional anchors of her life. Yet Streisand does not live only in memory. In 2025, she once again proved her enduring vitality. The album, The Secret of Life, Partners Volume 2, released on June 27th, marked her 55th entry into the Billboard Top 40, a record far surpassing any other female artist. Before that, she received the Genesis Prize in 2024 and donated the entire award to funds supporting climate action, women's health, and humanitarian causes. For Streisand, success has never been about polishing her name. It has always carried with it a responsibility to give back. True to her candor, in 2025, Barbra did not hesitate to denounce Donald Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric, while also speaking openly about Hollywood's gender pay gap, something she herself experienced during Meet the Fockers. Even without chasing fame, Streisand continues to play the role of a voice breaker of silence, inspiring women to speak out, to live authentically. From a voice that once shook Broadway to a conscience that speaks with integrity at 80, Barbra Streisand today proves that greatness does not lie in youth or fleeting fame, but in the ability to keep creating value, inspiring others, and leaving behind a living legacy in the hearts of the public. Barbra Streisand's journey is not just one of records and golden statuettes. It is the journey of a human being, mocked for her looks, trembling under the spotlight, stumbling in love, yet fiercely determined to hold on to her identity. It is her imperfections that make her relatable. Because who among us hasn't wrestled with the gap between dreams and fears, between ambition and heartbreak? In her 80s, Streisand remains living proof that resilience can turn darkness into light, and that sometimes the greatest achievement is not fame, but the right to live authentically. Her story is not only one to admire, but one to reflect upon. What has held us back? And do we have the courage to break through it as Barbra Streisand once did? Now it's your turn to share a thought. Perhaps it's a memory of Streisand's voice, a film that touched you, or simply your feeling after hearing her story. Because maybe in these small exchanges, we will realize that none of us have ever been truly alone in our journey through both light and shadow. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next stories of the legends you love.